From Wall Street veterans to crypto's biggest whales, and even Walmart. They're all going in on one altcoin. Hey guys, I had to find out why. Luca Netz has quietly turned Pudgy Penguins into crypto's biggest brand. And now he's building the perfect setup for Pengu to go from cold token to institutional target.
I think it's a byproduct of what we've created, which what I think we've created today is easily crypto's mascot in the face of crypto from a character perspective, and crypto's biggest, most popular brand and community.
And with a new blockchain built to break into mass adoption, Luca believes Pengu, an abstract chain, could be the most asymmetric bet in crypto right now. They've totally transcended the NFT hype. Pudgy Penguins is now doing over $50 million in annual revenue, with 80% coming from traditional business streams.
Going to do $50+ million in revenue this year just on the Pudgy brand. Toys, collectibles, licensing, content, events. But about 80% of it is just running a traditional business the same way that Hello Kitty would make.
But guys, Luca's playing a bigger game. Abstract Chain is designed to fix the broken consumer journey in crypto. And more importantly, to create real revenue that can be used to buy back its own ecosystem tokens off the open market.
How can I buy as many of these tokens as possible and take them off the market? But you can't do that if you're not making money.
And now that Pudgy Penguins has a CBOE-listed ETF, an exchange access most tokens would kill for, the path from crypto's most loved brand to a true institutional asset has never been more clear.
But getting the CBOE to pick up your ETF is a whole different stratosphere. And
without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Luca to the stage. All right, Luca, welcome, man. Good to have you here finally. You may not know this, you probably don't know this, but I think that if I have any long-term followers of my channel that have been with me since 2021, who continue to stick with me through the bear and everything like that, I made a video back on April 20th or April 22nd or something, 2022. And that was when the announcement came out that you were taking over Pudgy Penguins. And I'm like, no, fuck it. I'm just going to buy a couple of these because this guy sounds like a baller. I think he's going to do some good things, right? Someone comes in publicly, takes ownership, assumes ownership, has a background like you do. And that was a very good decision. Not only are we up about 7x on the NFT price, but also got that massive airdrop of Pengu, so that investment was well worth it. I still have 2 of them today, and but it's good to finally meet you face to face, and very curious to hear about the future of. Is the top company? It's Igloo.
Yeah, so the company that owns Pudgy Penguins and Abstract and another company, which we won't talk about on this interview, is a company called Igloo. But obviously, Pudgy Penguins is our flagship product and the thing that kind of got us to where we are today.
Why can't we talk about this Project X?
Project X is just under wraps. It's going to be the hope is to announce it in Q4 of this year. So, I gotta keep it under wraps for as long as possible.
Will Penguin holders benefit from it?
Penguin holders always benefit from everything that we do. Both Pengu and Pudgy NFT holders, as you well know, outside of the airdrop, I don't know how in depth you were in the community, but there was a year, I think in 2023, it was probably our breakout year. But we got $30,000 in third-party airdrops, right? So Dimension, ZK Sync, Layer Zero, things like that. So if you're a Pudgy Penguin holder, especially around the time that you made your video, if your listeners, bought when you bought, they'd have been really well off. One of the best trades of the bear market.
Were the little Pudgies also included in that? Is that?
Yeah. So when we bought the project, we bought big Pudgies, little Pudgies, and then the ROGs. The big Pudgies tend to get all the third-party airdrops because it's kind of like the greater consolidation of the affluent group within the Pudgy ecosystem. The little Pudgies don't get as many of the third-party airdrops, but the little Pudgies have performed super well. So probably around the time that you made that video, first year in Pudgy Penguins, I gave away 30 or 300 little Pudgies, and they were worth $20-$30 a piece. So I was like, okay, this is what I got to do to get the NFTs into more hands of people. Yeah, I mean the little Pudgies today are worth $7,500, probably a little less, $6,000. Their all-time high is $20,000. So it was pretty incredible. I was giving away $30 NFTs and it ended up being $20,000 at one point.
So on this whole airdrop and continuation of getting distributions and things like that, for anyone who's watching who may not have claimed their airdrops, do you know if any of those are still active and which ones were kind of the bigger ones?
Yeah, so the bigger ones were the ones that I had mentioned. There was Omni, there was ZK Sync, Layer Zero, Dimension. Dimension was the biggest. It was like $15,000 per penguin. I think all of the airdrops have since been locked. Again, this was really prevalent, probably a year ago. Still prevalent though is something I'm working on today to kind of bring that energy back.
Cool.
But nothing that I think you can that was previously allocated that you can claim today. But I will tell you, probably the alpha for the NFT side is, I know there's a couple big tokens that are TGing this year and early next that will be giving some tokens to penguin holders.
And how does one keep an eye of these things, make sure they don't miss out?
Yeah, so there's a !fish in the Discord, shows you all the opportunities. So if you're an NFT holder or a Pengu holder, go to the Pudgy Penguin Discord and then just type !fish. And basically penguins need fish to stay pudgy. And so the way that penguins eat is by eating their fish. !fish will give you all the opportunities. And so maybe it's not direct airdrops, but there's multipliers, maybe things that you're already doing that you could get more by having your pudgy assets and just clicking a button that a lot of people are not aware of. So !fish is the best source of truth in the Pudgy Penguin Discord, and you can find that in our x.com bio.
Cool. So I haven't sold any of my Pengu airdrop. I don't plan on doing that. But is it just holding it in my wallet is the best thing to do? Is there a place I should stake it to receive more benefits or something?
Yeah, you can hold it in your wallet if you want to go. If you want to do the extra hoop, you can bridge it to Abstract. It'll give you certain roles on the blockchain that can increase your XP. But that's for like people that are really active in the ecosystem and are really using it. If you're not using the chain, you're putting Pengu on Abstract's not going to do much for you. It's really just for people that are, really hustling on the chain and having a great time and having fun. It's probably a good addition for them to do that. But if not, I think Pengu holders are going to be stoked regardless over the course of the next couple of months and years. So I don't think no one needs to optimize for that if they're not actually using the chain.
So lately, there's been this kind of wave of prominent crypto founders and VCs and key opinion leaders and things like that, putting their penguins as their PFPs. We saw this back, in 2021 with Punks and Bored Apes. I didn't know that we would ever see those days ever again, but we're seeing it now. How do you do that? I think this is a lesson for anyone who's trying to focus on the attention game in the space, and it's more fierce now than it's ever been. More competition, memes, culture, community, and you're getting some of the biggest people like CZ and others to proudly come out and support Pengu, and Pudgy Penguins. How do you do that?
I think it's a byproduct of what we've created, what I think we've created today is easily crypto's mascot in the face of crypto from a character perspective, and crypto's biggest, most popular brand and community. I mean, there isn't a character that represents crypto today, that embodies crypto, that represents crypto, that has the attention around a crypto native asset the way that Pudgy Penguins does. And there's no brand that has ever been built within crypto that is as big as Pudgy Penguins is. And we've done it the right way. I think people look at it as like, is there some sort of direct action that we're doing to kind of create this? And I actually think it's success by 1,000 cuts, right? Pudgy was this huge NFT project that kind of crashed and burned like a phoenix rising from the ashes. I, as a community member, CTO'd it, put $2.5 million on the line. At any given point throughout this project's history, we could have made tens of millions, maybe even $100 million, minting new collections, diluting the supply, doing things the wrong way. Yeah. Instead, we stuck true to our guns. We had a vision. We did it the right way, and we just gave to people always, right? Gave them third-party airdrops, hustled for those, gave 50+% of the supply of Pengu. No one's seen an airdrop like that of that magnitude. There's nothing in crypto from a percentage perspective that you can point to that was that gargantuan from an actual percentage perspective and from an eligible wallet perspective. And really what this is kind of symbolizing, and I think a lot of these affluent people, whether they're founders or, crypto billionaires, are kind of seeing that like this is the token and the community and the NFT project of the people. These guys have done nothing but give. They're not takers, they're not grifters, they're not here to extract and move on to the next. We're here to make a legacy within crypto and to push crypto to hundreds of millions of people. And I think people just galvanize around that and they rally behind it. And there's something to be said about the magic of the cute IP that is the penguin.
Yeah.
Women love the penguin. Men love penguins. 5-year-olds love it. 60-year-olds love it. Americans, Europeans, Asians, everybody loves this penguin and understands it. So, sometimes you'll see like like you had mentioned, there might be like a craze back in 2021 with the Bored Apes and things like that. But I felt like that was a little marginalized to a certain group of people, whether it's like the cool bro, like maybe you and myself, or, maybe the super tech forward bro around the punk. The penguin is for that cool bro. It is for that tech bro, but it's also for that girl, that woman, that entrepreneur, that engineer, and it's borderless, it's regionless. And that's just kind of the nature of this like cute universal character. So I think it's just like all of these ingredients coming together, and then Coinbase just being like, we're going to PFP it. So Coinbase was the straw that broke the camel's back. They rocked the PFP, and then 300 people all followed suit. From your, biggest, most popular crypto billionaire to, your newest and latest and greatest, crypto startup. And I think that's just kind of embodying what we've been about for the last couple of years, which is like Pudgy Penguins is a brand for everyone. Our mission is to bring this and invade the hearts and minds of, hundreds of millions of people. We are the retail product within crypto right now, from a consumer perspective, from a token perspective, from an NFT perspective. And I think just people also, love just being a part of it. They smile, they feel good, they change the PFP, their engagement goes up, right? These things just help them help everyone else. So it was a pretty cool moment, and kudos to Coinbase for being culturally forward and kind of kicking off what I thought was probably one of the great marketing campaigns that we've seen over the last couple of years within the space. But I do think it's a byproduct of a multitude of factors kind of coming together and people just realizing and having fun with what I think is, the face of crypto.
What do you think? I don't want to say like, you'll get the point of what I'm trying to ask, but I don't want to say Bored Apes didn't make it, because I don't really know what Yuga has up their sleeves and what their plan is. They raised so much money, but they I would say that they're the ones who led with the giving back to the community kind of idea, right? You had your ape, and then you got your mutant, and then you got your kennel club, and then you got your deeds. And I mean, if you had one of those apes in the early days, you just collected, right? And I mean, there was really nothing that like sent them off the edge, as far as I can see. Obviously, they just kind of seemed to fade up into obscurity over the bear market. I don't know. I haven't seen too much about what they're planning on doing, how the game's coming along, how the other side might develop. Hopefully they're building some sort of beautiful universe that, becomes awesome one day, but I have no idea. But the question is there anything that you can see that you've done differently that maybe had that kind of rise to success, when it seems, at least for now, that Bored Apes has kind of fizzled back into the background?
Yeah, there's probably like 3 variables. I mean, first and foremost, Bored Apes set the playbook for what you need to do to have a successful project like this. And what I derived from what they did and took it to what I needed to do, which was make your holders super successful and rich, right? Like, just speaking bluntly and candidly, I've kind of been in this mindset and in this mantra of making them, if I make my holders and my community rich, they will reciprocate that value. Naturally, I'm an entrepreneur. I do want this to change my life as well. But, from a valuation perspective of what the business is, it already has. And if you look at it granularly, I haven't taken anything directly from them outside of selling physical products, which is a direct value exchange, right? Like you're buying a $10 plushie at Walmart. That's not, me asking you for thousands of dollars. I think, I know that group is working hard. I know they've got some bad beats, just naturally through like different leadership changes and things like that. But they definitely set the playbook for, I think, for us to kind of get to where we need to be. I think probably the core differentiator and the place where I avoid is they gave a ton, but they also took a ton, right? And I think if you look at us, I took nothing. I've just given a ton. And I think that puts you in a unique situation because when things get bad, crypto's a roller coaster, right? You can't control the roller coaster that is crypto. But, even with Pengu, right? So Pengu was down 90% 4 months ago, right? During the whole tariff chaos and the Trump, Melania, and Libra Black Swan event, which basically sucked all the liquidity out of memes. So you basically got like 2 back-to-back Black Swans, specifically for meme coins, which was the great meme coin extraction event via Libra, Melania, and Trump. And then you got the tariff 25% SPY in a month, right? Which is, you've only seen that 4 or 5 other times. So we got definitely a cascade of nonsense. But when we're down 90%, people aren't pointing to me, right? As to or have there's no reason to complain because I still have as much skin in the game as the next person, right? Versus when things get bad, a lot of people start to investigate and start to poke holes into what you're doing. And in their case, I think, again, I speak candidly, it's both a blessing and a curse because they also have to run a business, right? And being a profitable business that's raised huge from venture, they have valuations and expectations to keep up to. So it's not a fault. I'm just going to point it out as a place that I decided to avoid because I noticed when things got bad, that's where they got a lot of their negative sentiment from, which was, hey, you guys made $500 million on the other side. Hey, you guys made $70 million on the ordinals or $40 million on the ordinals. And then this, then that. And then the other cohort's like, well, they gave us all of this and that. And I think it was just a too rapid, and I wouldn't even consolidate that into taking. I would probably say they expanded too rapidly. So what you kind of notice is Yuga had Bored Apes and Mutants, and then the kennels, and then the serums. That worked really well. It wasn't until they did other side, I think, and then picked up all these collections. They started absorbing 10KTF, and then it's like heavy metals, and then you start seeing all of these people spending all this money defending each of those respective floors and prices, that when it all starts imploding, nobody's there to backstop and to buy the core collections, right? So for Pudgy, if you want to participate and you're an NFT collector, the Pudgy Penguin NFT is right there, man, right? Like there's big Pudgies and little Pudgies and some fishing rods if you really want to speculate and be a degen, right? But like it's pretty core. Like you either can afford a big Pudgy or you're going to buy a couple little Pudgies, and that's your ETH exposure for the NFT. I haven't issued any net new collections. It's a very focused approach. And then the other side of it is you have this token, super Lindy, super memetic, arguably, I think, the most highly impressioned character in crypto that's tokenized and liquid and available on basically every exchange on the planet, which is, gives people a proxy to have a piece of crypto's mascot right in its Mickey Mouse. And that's just one central thing. There's nothing else, right? So I don't think there's this huge rabbit hole of confusion. And so I'd probably attribute my framing to I think the one thing they did poorly was, I think, create too much confusion. And then off that confusion, have to kind of work backwards. So right now, Garga did a great job working backwards, removing all of the fat from the plate, which is just, for people who are not familiar, he unloaded all of the things that they acquired during that time or might have created during that time, and really hyper focused his now the org, I think, at Yuga is just Bored Apes, Mutant Apes, other side. That's the focus. And so now I think they're in a really good spot to compete and to build a great project for their community.
Cool. I want to jump over to Abstract Chain, because one could have easily said, 6 or 12 months ago, that there really is no need for any other L1s or L2s. I mean, they're all great, and I mean now they're all pretty great. Like especially if you want like the most secure and battle tested institutional chain that does smart contracts and programmable money, then you go to Ethereum, right? If you want like the newest Gen L1 that's like fast as you'll ever need, not battle tested, but if you want to do more things that are like less dependent on sending billions of dollars of value, then great, you go to Solana or Sui, right? And if you want to stay within the Ethereum ecosystem because you originally started building on Solidity, but you still want cheap and fast, okay, then you go to a L2 in Ethereum. So it's really, really hard to compete in that space. As a VC myself, whenever someone comes with a pitch deck for a new L1 or an L2, it's just not appealing because it's so hard to compete, right? But when it comes down to mindshare, you guys are doing a phenomenal job. How are you actually going to compete on attracting projects, developers, talents, and become a meaningful L2?
Pudgy Penguins and what we've been able to show over the last couple of years is really a great example, from a you'll understand the reference, but like it's a vertical example of a breakthrough app layer style product, right? Huge top of funnel built on top of a chain, right? Breakthrough success, going to do $50+ million in revenue this year just on the Pudgy brand.
How does that, before you jump on, where does that come from? I'm just curious.
Yeah, just toys, collectibles, licensing, content, events, probably attribute 80% of the line items. And there's some Web3 revenue. We get some chump change from royalties, things like that. Yielding strategies, validators. But about 80% of it is just running a traditional business the same way that Hello Kitty would make, $50 million. So it's great respect. And I think if you understand blockchains today, I think the back end is going to be commoditized, meaning like every blockchain will do the same thing. I actually comp blockchains to LLMs very uniquely in the sense that all LLMs will kind of get you to a similar answer. Again, some with a degree of separations. All transactions will get to from point A to point B, purpose of a blockchain, right? Like, why did ChatGPT winning? Why is it winning the LLM race? Well, I think it's because it has the best brand, it has the most users, and it has the best consumer interface. And so if I think LLMs and blockchains have a similar path, then what is going to make the next great blockchain win? I think it's going to be the one with the best brand, the most users, and the best consumer interface. And so I think we have the best brand in crypto, right? In Pudgy, but in Igloo, in the story, both from an executive team level, I think all the ingredients of what makes a positive brand in crypto we embody. And if we're not number one, we're definitely in the top 5. The second one is the user base. I think we have the most powerful crypto native community in crypto. But I also think we have the best ability to get net new users. I think we've proven that over the last couple of years. I think our strongest suit at the Igloo is marketing. And ultimately, I think crypto at its core is just a big, giant attention asset, even though it's more than that. But I think the prices of coins are that. And so I think our ability to get both existing users in crypto into the places that we want them to go, as well as users outside of crypto into the places that we want to go, is bar none. And I think distribution is going to trump all other moats moving forward. And I think this is holistically across many different businesses in the world, but I think distribution is king, and I think we're the best distributors. And then the last point to that is I think we have a UX, UI, and an ability to understand what end consumers want from a taste perspective in a way that I think is super, super unique. And so abstract the core killer product from a technical perspective is actually the interface. So the big innovation that we believe is going to happen around blockchains is if you actually think about a blockchain today, I think a lot of people are misconstruing what they are. A blockchain really is borderless payment rails with global composability, like full stop. That's what they are, right? It's Stripe and PayPal without the bullshit of cross-border legislation, meaning if you have an internet connection, you can use the chain. And it's global composability in the sense that anybody can build on top of these payment rails. It's like a permissionless Stripe, right? And so if you look at it through that lens, it actually has a lot of room to solve a lot of problems. But I think a lot of people in crypto, specifically on the blockchain side, are kind of following the leader and following this, what I call a general purpose approach. And the general purpose approach is kind of off the backs of Ethereum, this decentralized, do everything, be the backbone of the next gen internet economy. But that's such a gargantuan build that I think nobody's really going to be able to accomplish that, except for maybe the two incumbent leaders in Solana and Ethereum who are fighting for that race. Obviously, Ethereum's a little ahead, but Solana has its unique value propositions. I believe, right, the reason why we haven't had consumer adoption the way that everybody's wanted to see it over the last couple of years is because I think the consumer journey in crypto is broken. Meaning, if I want to use Ethereum and Solana, I have to go download MetaMask, and then I got to go to Uniswap, and then I got to go perform all these different functions in so many different tabs and places to go and feel the consumer crypto experience or the crypto experience. And so for me, I actually believe this idea of like fragmented third parties, off the backs of this decentralization thesis is the reason why we haven't seen this. So again, decentralization and consumer adoption are antonyms. They're paradoxical. They mean opposite things. I think all chains, and quote me on this, I think this is going to age really well over the next couple of years. All chains will see what I'm seeing, which is every chain should own a centralized interface. And they should own that centralized interface because you can control the consumer journey and the consumer experience in a way that is necessary for hundreds of millions of people to onboard. Because You and I and your listeners, Kyle, might know how to use crypto and might know how to put the pieces together, but you'd be doing the general public a huge disservice if we assume that everybody had the wherewithal and the technological capability to jump through the hoops and go through the steps like all of us watching this can. That your average barista, your average waiter, your average cashier cannot do these things. They want to go to one domain, one website with one login to do everything on chain. And so the technical innovation on abstract side is the central interface. We call this portal. It's portal.abs.xyz. It's basically one website. You put an email, you put a password, the whole thing's a giant smart wallet, and you can interface with the entire chain without having to click elsewhere, right? So it's a very consolidated and focused and singular experience rather than a distracted and fragmented experience. And then again, you pair that with our distribution, you pair that with our brand, and ultimately I think you see the same opportunity that we saw 3 years ago when we bought the NFT, which was we can compete, we can do things differently, and we can ultimately win, which is the same thesis we had for abstract and why we started building it.
Is that comparable to what Base is doing with the Base app?
Yes. So there's three movers here. The first mover was World Chain. So that's Sam Altman's. I didn't actually know it at the time. I thought we were first movers. So Sam Altman's World Chain's basically, World app is the chain. You use the whole entire chain through the app. Then again, Abstract started Portal. So Portal shipped 6 months ago. That was our thesis. We thought we were first movers, and then now the third mover here is Base. So this is how I know Base going in this direction was huge validation for us, and that's when I just knew, because I think the Base team is best in class, truly. So when I saw that they're pushing this one central, because I understand the consumer journey is just broken. Nobody can argue that. Anybody who understands, conversion flows and things like that, you go through crypto. I mean, that's the flaw, right? The flaw is that just like, why do I have to go to so many places to perform singular actions when in reality it should live through one place? So very similar to the Base app. And those are probably the three core examples of this thesis. And I think I know every chain is going to go and do this. This is a big build for every ecosystem. And the revenue implications, I think, are huge, which we may or may not get into. If you wanted to get into it, we can. I know I'm rambling. But it also solves the biggest problem with blockchains, which is blockchains are terrible businesses. Right? That's why the blockchain tokens are down only. You're wondering, like, why? Because the foundations have to sell tokens to sustain the price of or to sustain the actual build of the chain, because the chains are incredibly expensive to maintain and they make no money. Right? So the only way that you can actually sustain the chain is by selling the tokens. And then you start to understand why these things are so bad. By owning the interface, you can actually make a ton of money by actually running a real business, the same way that Apple App Store would make money, or some of these other places would make money, by creating some sort of real value exchange. So it solves more problems than one. But the main two, I think, is the consumer journey and there's the bad business that is the blockchain business.
Yeah, so that's quite important. Let's go into that for a second. The underlying gas token on Abstract Chain is Pengu, right?
It's not. It's ETH.
It's ETH. Okay.
So Abstract doesn't have a token yet. Right now, it has a reward system. So there's an XP system that basically, indexes for any future rewards or future token or TGE event.
Okay. So, not saying too much, but likely there's some sort of token in the future.
Yeah, one day, sure, when it's ready.
Okay. And okay, so then what you just said basically is creating that central interface to generate fees and revenue so that the foundation can maintain the layer 2 chain, which is expensive because you need devs, you need to innovate, you need to do R&D, et cetera, et cetera. So from hearing that, the objective from your foundation or from Igloo or whatever would be to try to not have to sell these Pengu tokens or potential future Abstract tokens, whatever, in order to continue to maintain, the innovative breakneck pace that you guys are operating at. So is that fair to say that your goal is to really monetize other means in order to not have to sell foundation tokens like we see Ethereum doing all the time?
Yeah, my goal is actually a little more drastic than that. My goal is to make the businesses make so much money that I can buy the respective tokens of each ecosystem, right? So it's actually twofold. It really solves two problems. So it's a double win for users and for people listening, which is, if you're making real money, you don't have to sell, and if you're making real money, you can buy, right? So it's removing a liability and adding a huge pro. So it's twofold. Like I'm in the mindset, you see this with Hyperliquid, I'm in the mindset of like, how can I buy as many of these tokens as possible and take them off the market? But you can't do that if you're not making money. And if you're not making money, you're probably doing the opposite, which is selling to go and sustain it. And that's why so many of these alts have just been broken as of recently, because it's like, dude, if you're not, the TradFi guys coming in have made this landscape a lot more sophisticated, right? People are starting to see who's making real money, who actually has growth potential, where like the numbers and the tokenomics actually start making sense. If you're making no money, you actually have the double edge, the double short end of the stick. And if you're making money, you have the double pro side of the stick, maybe even triple pro side, because there's a huge cohort of capital that won't even put money in if you're not making any money. So there's like five pros to making money and like 3 cons to not making money. And if you can actually make money, you're really in a small cohort of 50, 60 groups in crypto that are going to succeed for a very long time.
So you're in one of these interesting places where I see a lot of Web3 founders putting themselves, essentially, is where you've got two entities which can accrue value and distribute value. One is this Igloo company, right, which I guess went public as well. And then you have the Pengu ecosystem. And so this conversation I have with a lot of founders when they're raising money, and I'm asking what kind of vehicle they're raising money in. Is it equity? Is it tokens? Is it both? How does the value accrual happen in the ecosystem? Where does the value distribution go in the ecosystem? I think this is important for people listening to understand, like, Luca, what is your objective? And you kind of just said it, but I would like to see if you can even double click on that a little bit more to let me know, even from a percentage perspective. Let's say that you guys generate, call it $100 million a year in revenue. Is that how much of that would be ideally going back into, let's say, acquiring, buying, taking Pengu off the market or Abstract later on the line, whatever, versus how much is going back into the equity company for, shareholders and equity holders?
It's nimble in the sense that it's kind of twofold. So Zuckerberg said this really well, and I thought if this was a great quote, which was, you kind of do stock buybacks when you kind of run out of things to do. Right. And so it's a little twofold in the sense that, I would hope that as much money as possible would go to buying back the Pengu token, because if that was the case, it would mean that we have done so much that all of this revenue should just go back and accruing it. The argument that I present to people is, again, I've said this for years, but I think there's probably a handful of guys and teams in the world that are as good at marketing as we are.
Yeah.
And so the question would be, if I bought $1 million of Pengu, right, on the open market, or if I spend $1 million on Pengu marketing it, which one would accrue more value for the holder base? I think if I spend $1 million marketing Pengu, I could create $20 million in buying pressure, right? So that's an argument that I have made to our community as to why I haven't completely opened the floodgates here. Now, eventually, that statement won't reign true, because marketing, as you scale up the budgets, the kind of conversions get lower. It's just naturally how that happens. So if I spend $1 million a day and create $20 million in buying pressure, does that mean if I spend $1 billion that I'll create $25 billion in buying pressure? Not necessarily, right? It's kind of like a sliding scale, and power law goes into effect. So I think it's a balance. I think at the end of the day, all of the money goes back into supporting the community and the ecosystem, whether that's, me taking the money and doing a movie and a TV show with it, right? Like, what happens to the token and the NFTs if I'm in every AMC movie theater across the country? Now, that costs $30 million to do, but I can do it. And then so just really ebbing and flowing. I think it's really an ebb and flow thing. Maybe 1 year, IPs and deals take 12, 18 months to come to fruition. So maybe 1 year, I know there's just a giant gap and there's like literally nothing we can do because we're working for the years following it. Maybe I take half of the balance sheet and half of the revenue, or 80% of the revenue that year, and I buy the token with it, because there's frankly not, I'm focusing on the 2-3 years after that, where I know the marketing and the announcements and the headlines are going to be huge and the partnerships are going to be huge. So it's really a sliding scale of ebbing and flowing depending on, what's available and in front of us. And my kind of thought process is like, spend the money to make the brand and the character as popular as possible, and then kind of revisit in Q4 at the end of the year and see what's left over and see if there's any kind of room in the margin to kind of accrue and grow the treasure chest of tokens, for the company over the long term. that's kind of how I'm thinking of it. I just don't think it's as simple as an answer as I think people think, because I think if I was a protocol founder and my only talent was like technical development, I could give you like I'd be like 80%, right? 90%, because that would be my marketing, right? That would be how I got attention. Because I'm actually the complete opposite. My skill set is partnerships and marketing and headlines and doing deals, right? There's something to be said about like, okay, rather than spending $5 million buying the token this month, what if I spend $5 million, making sure that, we do a Super Bowl commercial, right? Which one do you think would be more impactful? $5 million buying a token or $5 million on a Super Bowl commercial, if it's a good one with Sydney Sweeney, right? So I'd probably tell you that the Super Bowl commercial with Sydney Sweeney would do better than me buying the token for $5 million. And that's kind of how I weigh it in my mind.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm gonna talk to you about something after this. You got something up your sleeve, like you can't tell us about. I do too, but I know that you'll love it. I think it's gonna be the most viral marketing campaign the crypto's ever seen ever.
Oh, we got to work on it. Come on, man.
Yeah, so we'll talk about right after this. I want to shift over to the public market side of things. Man, congratulations! Like you went up in Nasdaq, rang the bell. It's a pretty cool thing for any human being who's an entrepreneur to ever achieve. Just first of all, like, what was that experience like?
It was awesome. It was actually my second time ringing the bell. I did it the first time with Bitwise. It was a huge
You're used to it.
No. This one was with the mascot though, and it was pretty special because it's like they really, I saw the mascot. I was like, who brought this mascot here? And my head of community was like, this is my idea. And the thing was right there, right? Like there's only been like 3 other mascots in the history of the Nasdaq who rang the bells, like Tony the Tiger and like Blackstone's one, and then like one other one, right? So for the penguin to be in that cohort was pretty special.
Yeah.
But it was great. I appreciate you congratulating me.
So what is that? So is the public company, is it called Igloo, or is it, how did that happen? Was it a reverse takeover? Was it a SPAC?
No. So it was actually off the backs of our ETF. So the CBOE picked up our ETF. So if you're not familiar, the CBOE is the Chicago Options Exchange. It's only picked up like 6 or 7 other ETFs. Now, Igloo is a plan to go public, but we're not public today. So we rang the NASDAQ with VanEck, and a day later, the CBOE picks up our ETF, which is like our public vehicle, to basically buy Pengu, with that. And so the CBOE picking it up was a really big deal because, there's only like 6 other coins or 7 other coins the CBOE is picked up. It's right. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, XRP, Doge, and like Pengu, right? So wild, yeah, it's insane.
Were you involved in that conversation? Did you know it was coming? Like what happened?
Dude, I knew we filed for the ETF, but I had no idea that. So filing for an ETF and the CBOE picking up is 2 different things, right? Yeah. Like if you know the right person and you get the right guy to underwrite it, you can file for an ETF. But getting the CBOE to pick up your ETF is a whole different like stratosphere, and that's just luck. That's not. Success by 1,000 cuts. If we're not in Walmart, if we're not in Target, right. If everyone doesn't love and know the brand, I don't think they pick it up. But I think they see us and they're like, okay, meme coins clearly have PMF. These guys are the most legitimate out there. And then they start compounding and kind of making their assessment. And that's kind of how we got there. So that's I had no clue. It just kind of happened. It was awesome.
So. Okay, so is there any plans for you guys around treasury companies or anything like that? Anything in the works?
Yeah. So my thought process right now is I'm in the business of making penguins, Pudgy Penguins, the NFTs or the token as easily as accessible as possible to people. So I really have 2 strategies. The first strategy is exchange listings. Right now, Pudgy Penguins, Pengu, is available on more exchanges than pretty much every other token outside of the top 25. Meaning, I kind of thought about this from a conversion perspective. If I'm an elite marketer, marketers know there's 2 sides of the marketing equation. There's top of funnel and there's bottom of funnel. Bottom of funnel is responsible for the conversion, right? And a lot of people in crypto really look at the top of the funnel and they don't realize that the bottom of the funnel is broken. And so how you fix the bottom of the funnel, AKA increase your conversions from, hey, I just saw this announcement from Pudgy to, hey, I'm now a holder of Pengu, is by getting more exchange listings. And we want an absolute tear. We're on Robinhood, Legend, Revolut, Binance, OKX, BitThumb, Upbit, Crypto.com. Literally, there's not an exchange on the planet that we're not on, with the exception of maybe like one or two stragglers. And we made a concentrated effort there. So that's exchange listings. The second one is institutional vehicles, right? So ETFs, treasuries, whatever we can from an institutional perspective to get more traditional guys exposure to the Pudgy Penguin brand and the Pengu token, we are doing and we will do. Whether it's in-house or through third parties, I'm in talks with a lot of third-party guys from a treasury perspective. We're just adding this to their balance sheet. How can I support them? How can I get more eyeballs, et cetera, has been a huge focal point for us in terms of our game plan. So that's really our two strategies from a conversion perspective, bottom of funnel perspective, is really exchange listings and institutions. And now for exchange listings, I'm going to neobanks. Like, how do I get this on PayPal? How do I get this on? Just nobody's doing that, right? Nobody's doing that. And I think I'm happy to say that like we're really leading the charge in terms of what it looks like to increase conversions for your ecosystem. And then the institutional side, I'm opening up all the floodgates. We actually have been to DC 8 times in the last couple of months, and we're actually official government advisors to the administration in terms of helping craft legislation and just give our perspective and opinion on how this stuff should be formed and made.
So, is there any plans that you can talk about with any treasury companies or anything like that? I know what
you're poking at, Kyle, but I can't. I can't help you. I can't give you more clarity than that. But I can tell you that you will see these vehicles exist and then have Pengu exposure. A lot of people have come to me, and it's my job to support them on their ambitions. Actually, right after this call, I have a call with somebody who wants to do something like that. So we're all over it.
Is there anything else in that kind of the Igloo's working on that you can tell us about that we haven't talked about yet?
Well, the one thing I think is going to be a big swing for us is in about 4 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, our blockbuster franchise mobile game comes out. It's a game called Pudgy Party. I really encourage everybody listening to this, go to the App Store and just go to Pudgy Party and pre-register and pre-download. I think it's going to be our first big swing at becoming a franchise and a blockbuster hit.
Yeah.
And it is a game that I think is truly AAA, and people are going to be really impressed by the gameplay and the experience. I think from our perspective, we are really, really focusing on making that a smash hit going to Q4. And that will be a product that everyone can go and enjoy here in about 4 weeks' time.
Awesome. Luca, that was a phenomenal. Thank you so much. It was tons of alpha. I'm glad I held on to those pudgies. And is there anything else that you wanted to add?
No, thank you for having me, Kyle. And I'm excited to chat with you after this call.
Cool. Thanks, Luca.